Hey everyone, this is WobblyWallaby. Today I'll be doing an honest review for Sunlight when it comes to PvE. I'll be going over her build, showing you how to play her, as well as providing analysis on this class. This is the Taekwon hero class, which is currently available on the beta server for Ragnarok Mobile. It's not an event specific class, so you can get this anytime. I have tried Sunlight out on Legend Isles, Legend Museum, PSR, White Star Airship, and Constellation Tower. I'll provide my thoughts on whether I think this class can compete with the meta classes right now. First, thanks to Cremisi and Bacon for the translations. Be sure to check out the Google Sheet from Cremisi's Facebook page for more detailed information. In this guide, I'll be focusing more on whether she's good for PvE or not. Now, Sunlight feels very close to Taekwon. Sometimes hero classes are very different from the original class, but this one seems very close like Taekwon, except with enormous buffs. Almost like she's power creeping Taekwon. Now let's start with the core hero passive, Child of Golden Sun. At core hero passive level 7, you can get 0.7% penetration, magic penetration, and healing per solar level. The penetration percentage can get to some very high amounts, which is actually a really good way to get this critical stat. For example, here I have 212% penetration and 161% magic penetration, which is enormous. Now at level 4 core hero passive, you have anti-death if you're using Scorched Realm. This is pretty nice to have this and available whenever you need it. Scorched Realm lasts for 12 seconds, so it gives you a pretty big window of opportunity. At level 7, Scorching Realm is not triggered automatically. You can cast it manually, and the limit for solar power is raised to 200. Unfortunately, this is a class where getting to level 7 is mandatory. Without this, I would not play this class. I don't like Scorching Realm triggering automatically. I want more control over that, especially with the very bad side effect. I don't want this to trigger automatically on mobs, and instead I want to save it for bosses. For example, here I'm not at 7-7 and Scorching Realm triggers automatically. Then I hit the cooldown where I can attack, and all my solar power is gone too, so my damage falls dramatically. So next, let's talk about Scorching Realm. It is an active skill at level 7 core hero passive, otherwise it triggers automatically. This provides a nice large AoE and also increases skill damage by 50%, which is great for hitting critical stats. This lasts for 12 seconds, which is also a pretty nice duration, but unfortunately afterwards you have 3 seconds where you can attack, which is actually very horrendous, and also hate that you lose all your solar power, so your penetration percentage will fall a lot. Now you can have a rune that can return more stacks of solar power, but even at 20 it's not a whole lot. Scorching Realm is a great finisher and a burst tool, but these days the hardest instances require a bit more than 12 seconds, so I think the duration is a bit shorter than I'd like it to be, and the trade-off to lose the ability to attack and have no solar levels feels really bad. So I'd say definitely use this only very conditionally. Next is Scorching Realm, a passive skill. This helps you build your solar power faster, especially under Sunlight's blessing. Next is Sunlight Crash, an active skill. It does high damage and also after 0.5 seconds deals AoE damage. It also gives you 5 solar power stacks, which is great, and if you're at 80 stacks you ignore enemies' physical defense. Under Scorching Realm, your radius of the AoE from the kick is 6 meters, which is nice. You also have a rune that can give you up to 50% more damage, but since the modifier is already at 4500% physical damage, 50 isn't that high, so this isn't a game-breaking difference. This skill is on my auto, and it's nice to have an AoE that has a frequency of 0.5 seconds. It is also convertible, which is nice. Now if your weapon is Refined 15, then your initial hit is also AoE, otherwise it is just single target. Now, I'm not a fan of the 3 meter range when you're not in Scorching Realm, especially since I don't like being in melee range normally. I like the ability to be able to run around and be away from AoE. Next is Path of the Sun, an active skill. It has high damage frequency, making it great against legend bosses who have a damage cap. This is a physical damage skill, and when your solar power stacks reaches to 60, you have a 50% chance to flee physical and magic damage. This gives you a bit more survivability, and in Scorching Realm, your launch is double attack. For runes, the more move speed you have, the higher your damage, so it's nice to scale off move speed as well. I like the 6 meter range and the damage frequency. This helps you shred through bosses, and it looks even more crazy in Scorching Realm. Next is Solar Power Shower and Active Skill. You need 40 stacks of solar power to use this. It drains your solar power, but it causes life loss to monsters, and for MVP and minis a fixed amount. You also deal 10% more damage and HP loss per second. The Ruin lets you leech up to 5% for more survivability. The draining of your solar power isn't too bad, since you can get solar power through skills as well, so it's fine to cast it. The 6 meter area is also very big, so it's pretty nice to use against mobs. Next is Sunlight's Grace, an active skill. You can choose all elements or even an auto switch option. Now please note that the auto switch option only lasts for 5 seconds, whereas a fixed element is 600 seconds. The Ruin also gives you up to 60% more damage and on auto switch half of that, so this is definitely a Ruin that you'd want to reroll for. Now the auto switch option is better in PvP I think, where you may not know the element of what you're attacking. In PvE, the tough bosses will have an element which you can easily plan for. The extra damage is nice, and being able to use Ghost and Dark are nice too, since most classes can convert to this type. Next is Sunlight Ritual, an active skill. What makes this skill great as a debuffer is the 25% more damage and HP loss is excluded against undead or demon units. This is great for the Dark Convert meta. However, not every boss can be converted to Dark, so keep that in mind as well. You can also deal an extra 1% more skill damage to monsters for each solar power, which is really nice. I always like skills that do extra damage to monsters since it makes it more fair in PvP, but also makes classes much better in PvE. Next is Sunlight's Blessing, an active skill. This lets you double your solar power acquisition for 5 seconds, gives 10% max HP per second, and gains 90% final damage down. This is pretty insane survivability, and the Ruin can further increase the duration of the damage down effect. Next is Clear Sky, a passive skill. When it's sunny, your teammates restore 1% of their max HP per second, and you gain 20 solar power stacks. Giving teammates HP is nice for a party, but it's not game breaking for PvE to provide healing. It's definitely not at the Liu Maoxing level of providing party buffs. Next is Mind Eye Vision, a passive skill. You won't get put into a dark state, and you can also gain true sight against enemies you hit. This is great for PvP, but not so useful in PvE. Also, for every 1 dex, increasing physical attack by 5 and hit rate by 1, so Sunlight also scales with dex as well. Next is Sunlight's Protection. You can consume solar power to block 99% magical or physical damage for Sunlight. You also have the option to choose a toggle between magic, physical damage, or completely disable it. This is yet another nice survivability skill for Sunlight. Next is the weapon Golden Sunlight Tome. I like that it gives movement speed per refine and also elemental damage per refine. The elemental damage is particularly nice for hitting critical stats. For tier 5, the refine 15 effect is insane since it makes the first hit of Sunlight Crash AoE too. This is great against mobs, but sadly you need to refine to 15, which I don't like. Next, Aesir Monument, nothing too insane here. 16% ignore defense, 10% penetration, 10% movement speed are really the highlights. There's nothing for skill damage, damage to large monsters, or elemental damage. Next for gearing up, she's pretty simple. I basically make her the same way I would build any physical skill damage user. I also use elemental accessories whenever possible, basically the fire or water ones. On this beta account I lack shadow equipment, so I'll be spying on the sample build from a whale. The normal gear is about the same as what I would use, and here's the shadow equipment. This one gives high survivability with the skeleton bracer and perseverance armor, then ring a contract for more attack. The HP relic is optional. Next, here are my skills. On manual I have Scorching Realm, which I usually cast near the end of a battle when I think I'll be able to win within 12 seconds or need insane burst, since I don't like the side effect of this skill. Next I have Sunlight's Blessing to build solar power, and for the final damage reduction, you can cast this periodically during a battle. Next, Sunlight's Grace so you can get the element you need. I was playing around with the auto switch type, but since it only lasts for 5 seconds, you really should just choose a fixed element which lasts for 600 seconds, so you also get the extra damage as well. Next is Comet Crash in case you need a powerful burst manually. Next is Sunlight Ritual, which I cast before battles and when I need to do more damage against undead or dark units. Plus you get more skill damage against monsters, so you definitely can cast this periodically during fights. Finally is Solar Flame Shower. I don't use this as much against bosses, but this is great against mobs in White Star Airship, Constellation Tower, and Oracle Dungeon. It is a nice continuous AoE with a big 6 meter area. On auto, I use Path of the Sun and Sunlight Crash. Overall for gameplay, she's fairly easy to play for PvE, but you do need to watch her solo power and manage that properly, especially if you're not at 7-7 core hero power, then you need to deal with the timing and also dealing with the side effect of losing all your solar power and being unable to attack. Next for attributes, you can max dex since you get more physical attack from Mind Eye Vision, then invest in strength for more damage, and remaining into Vit for survivability. Next are some more thoughts and footage. Now before each match I try to charge up my solar power to max before engaging with the boss. I'm using Sunlight Ritual and Sunlight Blessing. If you're in a party, hopefully other people will wait around for you. Sunlight Crash and Path of the Sun does great damage as you can see when it's on auto. For this boss, I choose to use Scorching Realm at the end when I'm about to finish it off in 12 seconds. I really don't like losing my solar power, as well as being unable to attack. Next, here's some footage from Isles 3. Sunlight is really strong, but I think she's really bad if she's down at 7-7. Also, when she compares with Klitzberg, which is my current main and the one I most recommend to people, I still find Klitzberg's DPS to be better. Even at 4-7, Klitzberg is fine, whereas for Sunlight, auto-triggering the Scorching Realm is a deal breaker for me. So for new players, I definitely would still choose Klitzberg over Sunlight since she doesn't need to be at 7-7 in order to be effective. Now survivability wise, she is better than Klitzberg and a lot of other physical classes. She has nice anti-death and final damage reductions. I was able to breeze through Legend Museum 1-2 and Legend Isles 1-3 without much issue. I also didn't use the HP Relic, so her survivability is actually really great here. Now where I think she starts to struggle is in PSR or Constellation Tower. Once you get hit with very high damage reductions, her lack of debuffs is noticeable. Now she's great against dark monsters or demons, but when you hit other stuff it doesn't feel as strong as Klitzberg, who can debuff everything she hits, so she's less restrictive than having to deal with just demon or dark. Also, even if you can get super high penetration or skill damage, the lack of debuffs can be problematic. You need debuffers, otherwise your team won't be able to survive. I personally would still choose Klitzberg over her since I don't think Sunlight can beat Klitzberg for PvE. Also for Constellation Tower, she doesn't have the ability to tow things into a single point like Thor does, or reduce the refined damage like Halgrahen. So it's hard to find a slot for her in a highly optimized Constellation Tower level 5 team. But she does look great, has high damage with AoE with high frequency, able to convert to anything, easily hits skill damage, elemental damage, and penetration percentage critical stats. She has very high survivability, and does great against dark, which is good for the dark meta. But where she's really bad is if she's down to 7-7, I just don't like the side effect of not being able to attack or using up your solar power. I do consider her S tier, but I don't think she's good enough to be put in Constellation Tower at the moment. It's hard to remove something that's useful out of there right now, so that's where I'd be a bit hesitant to invest heavily on her right now. So what are your thoughts on playing her? Are you going to invest in Sunlight? Let me know in the comments section. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Here's a video that I'd recommend, and if you want more sneak peeks, check out this playlist over here.